She gave him 20 years, and he gave her exile. Catherine of Aragon crossed a stormy sea at 16, brave, royal, and full of hope. She had been betrothed to Prince Arthur, but death stole him before their life could begin. She didn't return to Spain. She stayed. And when Henry, Arthur's younger brother, came of age, he chose her. Not for politics, not for power, but because he loved her. He said she was wise, noble, and as beautiful as an angel. They married. She made him a king. She bore him children, buried most of them, prayed beside him through plague, rebellion, and grief. She ruled in his absence, protected his crown, forgave his anger. She gave him everything. For 2 decades, she stood beside Henry VIII, loyal, faithful, Queen of England. And when she could no longer give him what he wanted, a living son, he didn't grieve, he didn't comfort her, he erased her, tore up the marriage, stripped her title, banished her from court, forbade her from seeing her only surviving child, told the world she was never his true wife. But on her deathbed, broken in body, not in spirit, Catherine picked up her pen and wrote him a letter. She called him her most dear lord and husband. She forgave him. She prayed for him. And in doing so, she crushed him. Because what kind of man destroys a wife like Catherine and still receives her love in return? Was it her final act of devotion or the most elegant revenge in Tudor history? If royal love stories that end in betrayal keep you up at night, hit that subscribe button. Because in royal history, the crown may glitter, but it never protects the heart. She was born into power, Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the Catholic monarchs, King Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain. But power didn't mean peace. At just 15, she was sent across a stormy sea to marry Prince Arthur of England. Her future was supposed to be golden. Instead, it turned cold. Arthur died just 5 months after their wedding. Catherine was left a widow in a strange land, surrounded by strangers, with no clear path home. She didn't return to Spain. She stayed. For 7 long years she lived in limbo. Her clothes wore thin, her servants were dismissed. At times, she could barely afford food. The English court didn't know what to do with her, but Catherine refused to give up. Not out of ambition, but out of duty. She believed her place wasn't just beside a king. She believed she was meant to serve a kingdom. She was educated, fluent in Latin, philosophy, history, and politics. Raised by Queen Isabella, she had been trained to rule since childhood. So when Arthur's younger brother, Henry, came of age, it was recognition. He saw in her what the world would come to see, a true queen. Their marriage was blessed by the Pope after Catherine declared what she believed with all her heart. Her first marriage had never been consummated. The Pope approved their marriage, and in 1509, Henry VIII, just 17, married 23-year-old Catherine. She finally stepped into the role she was born for, Queen of England. And for a while, it was everything she'd dreamed of. He adored her. She advised him in politics, stood beside him in war, and prayed with him in times of fear. The people loved her. But something shifted. Henry began to pull away, quietly at first, just a look, a silence, a missed dinner. Still, Catherine held on. She had waited this long. She wasn't going to give up now. But the question lingers. Why did she stay, even when the man she loved was starting to disappear?
It started with silence. Not anger, not shouting, just distance. Henry, once warm and playful, began to grow cold. Catherine brushed it off. He was king. He had burdens. But the pattern kept returning. Every time she lost a child, he grew more distant, more bitter, as if her pain offended him. She had many pregnancies, but only one child, Mary, survived. And even that wasn't enough. What Henry wanted was a son, an heir, a strong, living boy. And Catherine, though still young and faithful, couldn't give it to him. Still, she never blamed him, never accused. She only prayed harder, loved deeper, and tried to be the wife and queen he had once cherished. She ignored the whispers, the long hunting trips, the courtiers who said Henry looked elsewhere. She believed their bond, sealed by God, was unbreakable, that if she kept showing love, he would return to her. But something darker was taking root. He no longer saw her as his queen. He began to see her as the woman who failed him. And still, she stayed. She thought loyalty would win him back, but what she didn't see was that Henry wasn't waiting for her to change. He was already planning to leave. Before the fall, she shone. As queen, Catherine of Aragon wasn't just respected, she was beloved. The English people saw her as gentle, wise, and deeply faithful. Unlike many foreign-born queens, she made England her home. She spoke the language, dressed like an Englishwoman, prayed like a saint, ruled with steady hands. And when Henry left for war in 1513, it was Catherine who ruled in his place, a foreign-born woman sitting on the English throne. When Scotland invaded, she ordered troops to the north, wrote speeches, signed commands, prayed over armor. When the English crushed the Scottish at the Battle of Flodden, Catherine sent Henry the bloodied coat of the Scottish king as a gift of victory. She had proven herself, not just as a queen, but as a warrior wife. But behind the cheers, something else was rising. Pressure. Her pregnancies were ending in stillbirths. Sons born dead. Cradles left empty. Henry's frustration deepened. He saw Catherine's womb as cursed, but she saw each loss as a test from God, and she never stopped believing that a healthy son would come. Still, the silence at court was getting louder. No sons, no comfort, no warmth. Catherine kept smiling, but her smile was stretched thin, because even in victory, even in faith, even in loyalty, a queen without a son was a queen standing on cracked ice. And in the shadows of the royal court, someone was already whispering in Henry's ear, "You deserve more."
By 1525, Catherine was over 40, still beautiful, still dignified. But Henry was changing. He no longer saw her as the girl who once crossed oceans to be his queen. He saw a woman who had failed him, failed to give him a son. And in his eyes, that meant God had turned against their marriage. So he turned against her. At first, Catherine didn't know. She thought he was just distant, tired, burdened by kingship. But then he said it aloud. He wanted their marriage annulled. Not a divorce. An annulment meant it had never truly existed, that their 20 years together were a mistake, that Mary was a mistake. Henry claimed the Bible was clear. If a man marries his brother's widow, they will be childless. Catherine fired back. I was never truly Arthur's wife. And more importantly, God is my witness. I am Henry's lawful queen. What followed was years of legal battles, letters to the Pope, hearings in Rome, and court drama in England. Catherine refused to step aside. She knelt before Henry in public, said, "I am your true wife." And even as he pulled her titles, banned her from court, and took away her jewels, she stayed firm. He moved her from palace to palace. The rooms got colder, the servants fewer, the threats clearer. And then came the cruelest cut. She was forbidden from seeing Mary, her only living child, the girl she had nearly died birthing, the daughter who was now declared illegitimate. Catherine's health began to fail, but her spirit never cracked. She wrote letters by candlelight, fastened her faith like armor, and in every message she signed off the same: "I am the king's true and lawful wife, and Queen of England still." But behind the silence, Henry had made up his mind. She would never wear the crown again. The year was 1536. Snow was falling outside the stone walls of Kimbleton Castle. Inside, the once powerful Queen of England, Catherine of Aragon, was dying in silence. She had been banished from court, forbidden from using the title Queen. No friends, no servants loyal to her. She was kept under guard in a wing of the castle, her furniture reduced, her food plain. Even the priest who visited her had to report back to the crown. Catherine's health had begun to fail months before. Most believe she had cancer of the heart or stomach. She was weak, often vomiting black bile. And still she prayed, every day, on her knees. Still she signed every letter the same: Catherine the Queen. She knew the end was near, and so in her final hours she asked for pen and paper. The cold ink met the parchment. The letter wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter. That would have been easy. Instead, it was devastating in its calmness. "Mine eyes desire you above all things. I make this vow that mine is the hand of a faithful wife and loving soul. I forgive you everything." She called him her most dear lord and husband, not king, not Henry, not the man who broke me. It wasn't submission, it was power. By writing that way, Catherine took control of the story. She reminded Henry of everything he'd thrown away, not with rage, but with something worse: grace. She made one final plea: "I humbly beg you, for the sake of our daughter, Mary, that you will be a good father to her. Not for herself, not for revenge, but for Mary, the daughter Catherine had raised to be brave, proud, and pious, and who had been stripped of her title and inheritance." Catherine signed the letter, she sealed it, and shortly after, she closed her eyes for the last time.
When the letter reached Henry, no one knows exactly what he said, but something changed. He ordered Catherine's funeral to be held at Peterborough Cathedral, but refused to let her be buried as queen. He did not attend. Yet on the day of her death, Henry was seen dressed in yellow from head to toe. Some courtiers claimed it was mourning in the Spanish custom. Others whispered he was celebrating. But deep down, everyone knew he had read the letter, and it had shaken something in him. Because Catherine had won, not by fighting, not by pleading, but by dying as she lived, with dignity, mercy, and iron will. And in her final words, she left him with one truth he couldn't escape. She was the real queen, and she had never stopped loving him.
Catherine of Aragon died with no crown on her head, no jewels on her fingers, and no royal titles carved into her grave.
In January 1536, she was buried at Peterborough Abbey. Not Westminster, not Windsor, no place reserved for queens. Her coffin was plain. Her funeral, quiet. Her title on the tomb? Princess Dowager of Wales. Not queen, not Henry's wife. Just the widow of a man she married at 15, and who died before her story even began. It was the final insult. But Catherine, even in death, refused to be forgotten. As news of her death spread, grief exploded across England and Spain. Women in London wore black in her honor. Spanish ambassadors openly wept and refused to dine with Henry. Priests gave secret masses for her soul, despite royal orders not to. One nobleman wrote, "There is more sorrow for this one woman than if the king himself had died." Mary, her daughter, her mirror, was shattered. She wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. She wasn't even told right away. Henry kept her hidden. He wanted her to forget. But Mary never did. Years later, when she finally rose to the throne as Mary I of England, her first mission wasn't war or wealth. It was her mother. She restored Catherine's honor, commanded prayers to be said in her name, wore black in mourning even years later. And when she sat on the throne, Mary ruled not as the daughter of Anne or Jane or Catherine Parr, but as Catherine's child. And Henry? He celebrated Catherine's death in public, dressed in bright yellow from head to toe. But those close to him, they saw something different. Behind closed doors, he was quiet. He stopped speaking of her. He never visited her tomb either. Some claimed he kept it locked away in a wooden chest, unread, unanswered, untouched. Others said he would take it out late at night after the court had gone to sleep, hold it, stare at it. Because how do you bury a woman who still calls you my most dear lord and husband, even after you've broken her? Henry married again, and again, and again. 6 wives, dozens of mistresses, endless heirs that didn't survive. But none of them stayed, and none of them forgave him like Catherine did. In his final years, bloated, rotting from the leg up, his courtiers avoided his chambers because of the smell. He rarely left his room. His portraits grew darker. His eyes lost left fire. By the time he died in 1547, even he knew he had loved a woman who never stopped loving him back, and he had cast her aside. Catherine's final revenge wasn't a curse. It wasn't poison. It wasn't politics. It was that letter. Those quiet words. That unbearable grace. And maybe that was what destroyed him most.
Thank you for watching so far. If you found this story as powerful as we did, don't forget to subscribe for more untold histories just like this.